Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm sure that by now most of you are familiar with this horrific situation that happened in Rochester, New York, where you had these 7 police officers be suspended related to the death of this black man. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this video. You may not be able to hear the audio. I know that I've had problems with the audio in the past, but what I'll do is try to recap some of the things that are said in the video. But in this video, you will see this very disturbing incident where this brother has a hood put over his head, and basically they suffocate him. So I'm going to, show this video. Then I'm going to read from this article from the New York Times, and then I'm going to provide my commentary. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. I truly appreciate you all tuning into this channel. If you have not subscribed to my channel, I encourage you to do so right now. Also, I encourage you to follow me on Twitter at NewPossBlog, and you can follow me on Facebook at New Possibilities. So I'm going to share my screen right now and play this video so that you all can see this and then read from the article. Okay, so let's share the screen. Okay, so this video is disturbing. So if you, so you should just bear that in mind before you watch this video. So I'm going to share with you all now, and I'll be right back with more commentary.
Get on the ground, man. Get on the Daniel Prude, please let me get my money. Daniel Prude, took on the flight. Please, Jesus Christ, I pray.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to share my screen again in a second, but I just wanted to provide some context. So you had a situation in Rochester, New York, where this brother is apparently having some mental health breakdown. And also, according to the reports, he was under the influence of PCP. His brother decided to call the police. The police arrive at the scene. As you saw in the video, this happened back in March. But in the video, you can see that he has no clothes on and it's snowing. The police stop him. They ask him to lay down. And, they cuff him and everything. And they proceed to put this hood over his face. And they're claiming that they did that because he was spitting. And in another video that I saw him spit once, but I didn't see him spitting at the police. And also they claim that he had COVID-19, and that's one of the reasons why, or said he had COVID-19. That's one of the reasons why they decided to put the hood on his head. That's what they claim. So here you have a brother that's handcuffed. He has a hood on his head. You know, he obviously poses no threat at all because he doesn't have any weapons. He has no clothes on, and it's obvious that he has no weapons. He's restrained, you know, meaning he has the cuffs on. He doesn't pose any kind of threat to these people, but they decide to pin him down. And while he's pinned down, he suffocates and he passes away. You know, he ends up passing away, I think, like a week later. You know, they have him on life support and all that kind of stuff, and he ends up dead. And, you know, this happened back in March, and it only recently came to light after public records request. And then after this whole incident, you had the mayor talk about how she didn't have information about this case. She didn't know all the facts. And upon learning of what happened, she decided to suspend these officers. And so what I'm going to do is read some excerpts from this article that goes into more detail. And shout out to everyone in the chat. You know, I appreciate you all tuning in. So I'm going to read the article that goes into the details and then come back with some brief commentary about this issue. So this is from the New York Times. It says 7 Rochester police officers were suspended on Thursday in the suffocation of a black man as he was being detained in March. And like one of the questions is like, why did it take them more than 5 months to conduct an investigation or take any action? And the man's name who died, his name is Daniel Prude. It says the man, Daniel Prude, was having a psychotic episode. You know, it says that he was cuffed by officers after he ran into the street naked in the middle of the cold night and told at least one passerby that he had the coronavirus. So before I go any further, I just want to provide some more information about what happened during that video, because I know that probably a lot of you couldn't hear. There have been problems when I play videos on here. People can't hear the audio. But in the video, you know, he's cuffed and all that. At some point, he says, "Give me that gun." But again, he can't grab a gun because he has his hands handcuffed behind his back. He has this hood on his head. I'm sure he can't hardly see anything. And at some point, you know, when they pin him down, he says they're, you know, basically saying that they're trying to kill me. And he says, "Get that shit off of my face. Like, get this hood off of his face." And in this video, you can hear one of the officers actually laughing about what has happened. So I just wanted to give you some of that information, some of the information that you couldn't hear in the video. But I'm going to proceed on. So it says that he told a passerby that he had the coronavirus. It said Mr. Prude began spitting, and the officers responded by putting a mesh hood over his head. And that's what you can see in the video footage. And it says when he tried to rise, the officer forced Mr. Prude face down on the ground, one of them pushing his head to the pavement. And it says that, you know, Mr. Prude was held down by the police for 2 minutes and had to be resuscitated. He died a week later at the hospital. It says his death didn't receive widespread attention until Wednesday, when his family released raw videos of the encounter. A scene of it goes on to say the scene of a black man handcuffed and sitting in the street wearing nothing but a white hood seemed like a shocking combination of physical helplessness and racist imagery from another era. And that's something I want to touch on in a second. So, you know, this article goes on to talk about how Rochester became the latest city that have been impacted by this violence against Black people. You know, you all know about the Jacob Blake situation. Like every other day is another person that we hear about. And this goes on to talk about demonstrations that took place in the city. And it says disciplinary action was the first response to the death. You know, and the mayor apologized to the Prude family, um, saying that she had been failed by the police and, you know, the mental health system in our society. So let me see if there's anything else that I want to highlight from this story. And I'm just going to share my screen with you all real quick so you can see which article I'm referring to. So here's the article, and it will be in the description box so that you all can read the article for yourself and judge it for yourself. So I'm just going to read a few more excerpts. It says, you know, the mayor didn't offer details as to why the investigations into the encounter took so long. But she suggested that she had been misled by the police chief. And she was told that it was about, you know, him dying from an overdose while in police custody. But as we can see from the video, it's entirely different. You know, a different thing occurred. This man didn't just die from some drug overdose. Um, let me see if they have information about the autopsy. And it says that the Monroe County medical examiner ruled that Mr. Prude's death was a homicide caused by complications of asphyxia in the setting of physical restraint. And it goes on to talk about how these other things were contributing factors. You know, it says excited delirium and acute intoxication from PCP were contributing factors in this man's death. Okay, so let me just stop sharing my screen, and I just want to briefly share my thoughts about this situation. Shout out to the people that are tuning in. I truly appreciate you for tuning in. But let's just go through it. Like, first of all, you know, there's no reason why this man should be dead. Like he was cuffed. He had no clothes on at all. He was unarmed. So the fact that he has no clothes on and he had nothing on him, you know, is an example of how he didn't pose any kind of threat to these police. He had his hands behind his back. They put a hood over his head. There's no reason why they had to restrain him the way that they did. And as a result of that, you got another brother that's dead, you know, another black man killed at the hands of these police. Another thing is this, like just the imagery alone of this situation, like they said in the article, is reminiscent of another time. I mean, when I saw that man with the hood on his head, it reminded me of what happens when people are lynched. Like, you know, people having hoods on their head before they're hung, you know, by a lynch mob. And also, you know, the nudity, like that reminded me of the slave era, like when black people were stripped of everything. You know, they were literally in a situation where they would be naked like that when they're captured and subjected to all kinds of torture. One thing that comes to mind in this whole situation is this, like, you know, people need to stop calling the police when it's not absolutely necessary. I mean, you did have this situation where this man was going through this mental health breakdown and stuff like that. But that call to the police did not help the situation. Instead, you have somebody dead. Like this man, I guess he was trying to help his brother, but because of that call, now his brother is dead. Like our first instinct should not be just to call the police in every single situation. Like some situations may not be a call, something that requires police intervention. And I don't know all the circumstances, like according to the article, but I didn't see anything in that article where he was posing any kind of threat to anyone. And that's part of what people are saying when they're calling for the defunding of police. They're basically saying that some things shouldn't be the function of police. Like, this is a mental health situation that should be dealt with by mental health professionals instead of like law enforcement. Like, I can understand if it's a situation where somebody has a weapon or something like that and they pose a serious threat, then in that situation, it's understandable why you would have the police intervene in that situation. But here you have somebody that's suffering some kind of mental health breakdown. And even if you are not going to dedicate another agency to address that kind of mental health situation, or that kind of situation where somebody is intoxicated, they need to have police officers trained to adequately address people with mental health issues. Like, I was looking at some articles some time ago, and they were just talking about like how people with different mental health issues are more likely to be victims of police brutality and be killed by police than other groups of people. So this is just another example how you need better training of the police, people that are able to specialize and de-escalate in these kind of situations where somebody is on some of these, on drugs, or they are suffering some kind of mental health breakdown. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just think that this situation, obviously didn't have to end the way it did with a black man dead, because he was restrained. I mean, they didn't have to hold him down. Like, he was already cuffed. He was helpless. Even if they were to restrain him, they didn't have to restrain him in such a way where he ends up suffocating, dying from suffocation. Um, it's just a horrible situation. And then another thing that I forgot to mention about that video, at some point while this man is choking, and suffocating and vomiting, like they said that all this fluid was coming out of his mouth through the hood. They said it was like water coming out of his mouth. While this is going on, you have one of these officers laughing, laughing in the background. Like, it's like they are so detached emotionally, like, and it's just a prime example of how Black life doesn't mean hardly anything to these people. Like, here you have a man literally in the process of dying, suffocating, and you have somebody in the background laughing, one of these officers laughing in the background. That just shows you how little Black lives are valued in the minds of some of these police officers. So yeah, I just had to, bring this issue to your attention. I will be following the developments in this case. It just seems like it's so many of these cases. And it may not be a question of more of them than before. It's just like, because of this technology, it's being brought to our attention. It's like it's a traumatic experience, not only for the family members, but for the Black community to constantly be bombarded with these images of primarily Black men being killed on camera by police. And most of the time, there is no justice for these families. Like, for the most part, a lot of these police aren't even charged with a crime. They don't even get charged, and when they are charged, they get off a lot of times. And that's why you have so much outrage. You often hear people want to bring up the red herring of Black on Black violence as if that's has anything to do with the subject of police brutality. The fact of the matter is, like, the inner city violence that people are complaining about, if a Black person is caught and there's evidence and people testifying and all that kind of stuff to the homicide, that person goes to jail. They end up being locked up for years. But when you have these police killing people, even when it's on camera, no charges are brought. Even when you got all these witnesses that come forward and the case may be brought to trial, even then, these police officers walk. So that's the reason why you had an outrage. That's the reason why people are in the streets talking about Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff. So before I sign out, I just want to check in with you all to see if you all have anything to add to this discussion. I appreciate you all tuning in. Again, if you are not subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe today and, share this channel with your friends and family. I'm trying to reach at least 10,000 subscribers, and I'm getting close. And with your help, we'll reach that milestone. Yeah, so rat-tat-tat. Tony says this, cops have immunity, so they can go out and kill and walk free. Yeah, I mean, there is some immunity that cops have against individual lawsuits, but they can still be subjected to, prosecution for committing crimes against citizens. And that whole point that you raised about immunity, brings to mind another point, like the need for us to pass legislation dealing with police brutality. And it's my understanding that there is a police reform bill before Congress now. I think it's named after George Floyd. And I need to look into more of the details regarding that bill, but I know that that's something that's before Congress now. And I encourage each of you, instead of just complaining about these situations, I encourage you to reach out to your congressmen and to your senators, your two senators, and demand that they pass that George Floyd law. And I'm going to look it up real quick and just do a summary of what that law is about. Because we got to move beyond just complaining about something, because we all know about the problems that exist. Like, it's easy to talk about the problems. What we need to be talking about is like how we can change the situation, what we can do as an online community to address the situation. So I'm going to look this up. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so hopefully this is the right. I think this is the right information. Just bear with me a second. So this is like a summary of the bill. It's called Justice and Policing Act. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, so here's the information. It's HR 7120, George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. And it says the bill addresses a wide range of policies and issues regarding policing practice and law enforcement accountability. It includes measures to increase accountability for law enforcement misconduct, to enhance transparency and data collection, and to eliminate discriminatory policing practices. And these are some of the things that it does. It lowers the criminal intent standard from willful to knowing or reckless to convict a law enforcement officer for misconduct in federal prosecution. It limits qualified immunity as a defense to liability in a private civil action against a law enforcement officer or correctional officer. Authorizes the Justice Department to issue subpoenas in investigations of police departments for a pattern or practice of discrimination. So let me stop sharing my screen. So I want to encourage you all to push and urge your members of Congress and your senators to pass that act. We need to make that happen. That will be a step towards addressing a lot of these problems that exist. in our community. It's just a shame that you would have an image like this in modern day and age of a Black man being like suffocated live on camera. And it's like, I mean, we've seen Eric Garner choked on camera. To this day, no charges filed against that officer. We had a George Floyd situation where the officer's been charged, but we'll see what happens. You know, in that George Floyd situation, they had video that, like, a relatively newer video that shows the crowd of the people actually pleading to the officer, you know, showing their faces, like, you know, and it's a diverse crowd. These people are pleading to that officer to get his knee off of that brother's neck. But the officer didn't listen. Again, another example of just how callous they are towards us and how much they disregard Black lives. But let's see what else you all are saying before I sign out. Yeah, so Dave Bowman says, good morning. These police officers are getting way out of control, killing Black folks. It needs to stop. Shout out to Bonafide 1970. Egyptian Queen said, no excuses, this was homicide. Yeah, I know, Bonafide, there's a ruling, and I really need to do some more research on this, but it's my understanding that there is a court ruling on that question. But Congress can make laws to change situations as long as the laws don't violate the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. Congress has the power to limit the immunity that's granted to these police officers. And that's why I'm, again, encouraging you all to reach out to your members of Congress. And all you have to do, you can go online to find out who's your member of Congress if you don't know. And you can easily find out who your senators are. Each state has 2 senators. And we need to reach out to these people and make sure that they pass this law. And passing the law is just one step in the process. After you pass the law, you have to have people that are willing to enforce the law. Yeah, so with that, you know, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit the notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. And I may do one last video today, a real short video, but I want to thank you all again. Have a great day. Hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content. Peace and blessings, everyone.